Hello and welcome back to the Second Take Podcast. My name is Calvin Williams. I'm here with my co-host, Marco Rogers, and today there has been a lot of stuff that has happened over the weekend, so we will get it started with the NFL Conference Championship weekend, a little bit of reaction on that, and then we have a lot of pretty good large basketball segment today for college basketball. We're going to do some upsets that have happened in the past week and then move on to bracketology. And then finally, we're going to finish it off with the NFL awards predictions as to who we think's going to end up winning those as the nominees have been announced. So, Marco, can you get us started off with the less interesting of the two games with the Eagles absolutely annihilating the 49ers?
Yeah, I mean, this game just wasn't close. As the Eagles' first game, Jalen Hurts didn't really have to do much, 15 for 25, 121 yards. Just pretty easy game for him. The run game wasn't great. 14 carries for 48 yards for Kenneth Gainwell. He was their leading rusher yet again. Their leading receiver had 36 yards on 2 receptions, that being Devontae Smith. This game was just really ugly. It was not fun to watch. With Purdy going down, Josh Johnson came in. He was absolutely mid. McCaffrey couldn't completely get going despite a pretty decent game, but this game was just so boring. Lots of short touchdowns. Lots of punts, just not a very fun game, and the Eagles pretty much controlled the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, San Francisco lost. They had 3 different fumbles, and they lost all 3 of them. One by Josh Johnson, one by Debo, and one by Brock Purdy. So just really a rough game for the Niners. As you said, not an overly impressive offensive performance from the Eagles. They just capitalized on those short fields that they were given, and dominated this game. And then next up, we have the Chiefs in a game filled with questionable calls, getting the win off a game-winning field goal versus the Bengals. There was a lot of refereeing questions that were asked after this game. I mean, there was plays like holding calls on third downs that, yeah, I mean, that was probably a holding, but also there's a play before where the Chiefs got to completely redo a play after they did not complete a third down because the referee was apparently blowing the play dead. So it was just really a questionable game, and you hate to see the Bengals go out like that. Margo?
I mean, they still lost this game themselves. Joe Burrow threw 2 picks. The run game couldn't get going. I mean, Mahomes outplayed Burrow. Both run games were pretty sluggish, but Chiefs receivers were getting open honestly better. Marquez Valdes-Scantling had 6 receptions, 116 yards, and a touchdown, and caused lots of holdings. But I will say on that last play, before the late hit, it was a pretty clear late hit out of bounds on Osai, but there was a pretty clear hold on the Chiefs before penalties probably should have offset. I mean, the intentional grounding that they called on Burrow was awful. It was not intentional grounding. That sent that back to like a 3rd and 16, which they did convert, but they ended up having to use that play, which likely would have ended up being better if they used that play on a 1st and 10. But just overall, refs did play a factor, but I'm not going to say refs completely won this game for the Chiefs. They still outplayed the Bengals. So yeah, good win for the Chiefs, but it just didn't feel like the game was completely just team versus team. There was a huge ref factor in that game.
Yeah, and what we saw is something that we weren't expecting. We saw 2 defenses take control of this game. This is 23-20, low-scoring battle. We saw a few guys from Kansas City step up. Obviously, Travis Kelce's going to be there every game, but Marquez Valdes-Scantling, huge game, 6 receptions, 116 yards and a touchdown. Great game for him. Hopefully, he can continue to play well for the Chiefs, and that would put them in a very good position as they are playing a very tough Eagles team in the Super Bowl coming up. Marco?
Yeah, I mean, Super Bowl definitely going to be a very interesting game, but I'm just very excited to see what happens.
Yep, and then next up, we have college basketball. We're going to talk a little bit about the upsets that have happened. Started off, number 2, Alabama, getting destroyed by Oklahoma. definitely a surprise. I still think Alabama is a very good team, but this was a rough game for them. Oklahoma proving that they're going to be a very solid team when they enter the SEC as a basketball team. And Alabama you're obviously not going to play well every game. We've seen that with every single team in college basketball this year. Excuse me. But definitely a rough loss here by Alabama. Marco, you want to take the next one?
Oh, yeah. Next up, this isn't much of an upset, but number 10, Texas beats number 11, Xavier. Very pretty big rivalry game. This was
Baylor, not Xavier.
Oh, yeah, Baylor. This was a very highly contested game, close game, but Texas comes out on top.
Huge game there. 10 versus 11, very exciting matchup there. And then next up, number 13, Iowa State loses at Texas Tech. A lot of people are talking about this one. This was a really big loss for for Iowa State. They've had a very solid season as of yet. They're just sort of hoping they can recover from this loss here. It was a very close game, went into overtime, but Texas Tech was able to pull through. Marco?
Oh, yeah, big one for Texas Tech if they want to maybe make a tournament push. Next up, number 4, Tennessee takes down number 10, Texas. Texas beat Baylor but lost to Tennessee. Tennessee is a very, very good team, so not a terrible loss. But still, Texas not able to move up maybe into a 1 seed. If they had won this game, they probably could have.
I agree. Texas is teetering between that 1, 2, or 3 seed area. So, we'll see where they end up as we are doing a bracketology segment coming up. Next up, we have number 11, TCU losing at Mississippi State. TCU has had a solid season as of yet. After this loss, they dropped down to number 15. Still a very solid TCU team. They got a win over Kansas last week. They beat an Oklahoma team that just blew out Alabama. So tough loss here. Only lost by 7. They have a couple good opponents coming up. West Virginia, Oklahoma State, Kansas State's a huge game. So if they can keep winning, you could definitely see them jumping up to 3 seed area. Marco?
Very tough loss for TCU, but they're still very much in the tournament. Number 13, Xavier loses at Creighton. This was a big loss. This really hurts their tournament. It looked like they could even be a 2 seed, but now it's going to be tough. Obviously not the best year in college basketball in terms of quality of teams, but still this is just a tough loss and a must-win game against a pretty decent Creighton team, but not that good of a Creighton team.
And then the final game that we will be talking about, number 15, Auburn losing at West Virginia. They're now down to number 25, just barely sticking in the rankings. This Auburn team, 4th in the SEC right now. Still a very solid team. You'll see where we put them at coming up in our bracketology segment. A couple huge games, though, coming up. Georgia, Tennessee. This West Virginia game was just rough loss. Only lost by 3. You'll see a lot of these good teams are losing by very close margins, so it's not like they're just getting blown out of nowhere. But they're definitely gonna need to step it up with that Tennessee game coming up. Marco?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And before we start the bracketology, I just want to make sure all of you know this is not a great year in college basketball. As I said, a lot of these teams aren't really that good. Even some of the 2-3 seeds could be beaten in the first round, depending on how the group of 5 teams. Depending on how good the group of 5 teams are this year. So if they can step up, I could see maybe anywhere from 6 to 10 top 5 seeds go out early. So just not a great year, but that just means that March Madness is going to be even better. So Cal, why don't you start out with the 1 seeds?
So with our 1 seeds, our overall 1 seed, no surprise here, we have Purdue. They've remained the most consistent, only have 1 loss in a pretty inconsistent Big Ten conference. Usually those Big Ten teams knock each other off, which is why there's not usually a Big Ten 1 seed. But they've remained at the top for a little while. They're looking very dangerous. Marco?
Oh, yeah, Purdue looking good. Number 2, Houston. I mean, they did fall to Temple. I'm not sure if they're really that good of a team, but they tend to do very well in March. I believe they made the last 2 Elite Eights, made the Final Four in 2020. So they're still a very good team, and I think they could go deep. But again, they're very beatable, so I'm not sure how good they're going to be. Next up, Tennessee. They had a very big win against Texas that helped them out. A lot of other teams lost. Again, this Tennessee team, I think, is worse than the Tennessee team last year that Michigan beat in the second round. They're pretty much the same team, but lost their best player, Kennedy Chandler. But college basketball just got worse this year. A lot of teams getting upset. So I could see Tennessee being on upset alert. Cal, why don't you take the next one?
Next up we have Alabama. Obviously, we said they just took that crucial loss to Oklahoma, but they're still at number 1 just because there's not any other teams that have really proved that they deserve to be ahead of them. Next up are 2 seeds. First, we have either Arizona or UCLA, depending on who wins the Pac-12 tournament. And then with our second 2 seed, we have Virginia. They've remained a solid team throughout the year. A couple losses, but they definitely are near that top spot. And then with our third 2 seed, we have Kansas State. Kansas State's been very good this year. They have a couple marquee wins that have propelled them up the rankings. And that's why they're at the number 2 seed spot. And then our last 2 seed is Texas. Texas definitely, if they had won that game versus Tennessee, we could definitely see them even at a 1 seed right now. But this team is still very good and definitely could be, definitely we could see being a 2 seed coming up in March. Marco, you want to take 3 seeds?
Oh, yeah. So our first 3 seed is going to be whoever loses the Pac-12 championship, or UCLA versus Arizona. Maybe one of them gets upset, but most likely Pac-12 championship loser will be UCLA or Arizona. And I think whoever loses that game will be 3 seed. Next up, Kansas. They've really started to slump. They win a lot of close games, and they're starting to lose some not so close games. But I still think they're a great team. Grady Dick's a good player. Kansas is still a solid team, and they'll be dangerous in March, but also an upset alert. Baylor next up. They lost to Texas, but I mean, they haven't really lost any bad teams, which is why they're still here. They're always a good team every year. And next up, Marquette, our first non-Power 5 team, even though basketball is pretty much the Power 6, as you all know. But Houston was also a non-Power 5 team, I guess. But Marquette out of the Big East, they've had a very, very solid season. Just very impressed with the way they've played, as they sort of also came out of nowhere, having started the season actually pretty poorly, but really able to bounce back. And I'm just excited to see how good this team can end up in the tournament.
Yep. That's it for the 3 seeds. Next up, the 4 seeds. We're gonna start moving a little faster here. Gonzaga, our first 4 seed. Their only ranked team they have left on their schedule. They play St. Mary's twice. Gonzaga they're a very okay team. That's all I'm gonna say about them. They have 4 losses in a pretty trash conference, to be honest. And then our other 4 seeds are Iowa State, Xavier, and TCU. The team I want to talk about, though, is Xavier, because Xavier is one of the best 3-point shooting teams in all of college basketball. Currently, they rank number 5, shooting nearly 40, as close to 40% from 3-point as you can get. And that's a recipe for a very good tournament team. So you could definitely see them making a run to possibly even the Elite Eight. So I would definitely look out for Xavier going into March. Marco?
Yeah, Xavier definitely looking like a solid team, and it tends to be some of like the Big East American Conference teams can make big runs while all the Power 5 teams get upset. So maybe they can be one of those teams. For the 5 seeds, Providence, another Big East team, they've been very solid. St. Mary's, I mean, if they can beat Gonzaga both times and win their conference, the Western Coast Conference, then they could definitely be maybe even a 3 or a 2 seed if they can win out, but that's going to be tough. Next up, Florida Atlantic. Wow, what an incredible year out of them. This is the first relevant actually I guess Gonzaga and St. Mary's also come out of a pretty bad conference, but FAU, a team, really came out of absolutely nowhere this year. Nobody even had them making the tournament, but here they are as a 5 seed. Next up, Indiana. They hit a big slump, but now with Tracy Jackson Davis healthy, they have looked like a top 10 team recently. Just some of those losses when they're slumping are holding them back. But as of right now, this team is playing like a 2 or 1 seed. So if they can keep that up, they'll definitely move up.
Yep, and then for our 6 seeds, we have UConn, Clemson, Illinois, and Duke. UConn started the season looking at possibly being even a 1 seed. A couple losses have propelled them down the rankings all the way down to number 24 on the AP poll. Clemson has been pretty on and off. There's definitely flashes of being a very good team. Currently 8-4, first in the ACC. If they win the ACC, you could possibly see them jumping up maybe to a 5 seed, but we'll see how that plays out. And then Illinois, solid Big Ten team, got a good win over UCLA pretty early in the season, and just a very solid team right there. And then Duke is Duke's Duke, and they're gonna be a very solid team come March. Marco.
Yeah, Duke, some of their players, they have a lot of freshmen. Derek Lively starting to come together, the number 1 overall freshman. So, I mean, when Duke plays their potential, they are a 1 seed. But when they don't play well, they're not in the tournament. So that's why they're sort of in the middle here as a 6 seed. 7 seeds, South Dakota State, they're always a very solid basketball team, and here they are as our first 7 seed. Next up, Auburn. Lost Jabari Smith and Walker Kessler of the NBA. That certainly has affected them, but they still have Wendell Green. He's a very good player. They have a good backcourt, a decent front court, and in a tough SEC conference, it's going to be tough to see where they're going to end up, as the SEC tournament is a very difficult tournament to win. But if they can maybe make it to the SEC tournament championship, maybe only lose a couple more games this year, I could see them moving as high as a 4 seed. So this team, lots of potential, but also potential to move down. Missouri, the next team, another good SEC team. They have been an incredible team this year. Not a lot of people expect them to be great, but they have been. Next up, Miami. They were a lot better earlier in the year, but they're still a 7 seed. They were a 10 seed last year, made the Elite 8. They pretty much returned their whole roster. So I'm looking at them to make another sort of Cinderella type of run.
Yep. And then our next seed is the 8 seeds. Creighton, Michigan State, Rutgers, North Carolina. A couple Big Ten teams here. Creighton, first. They are one of those teams that started off really high in the rankings and has sort of fallen down. Still, we're looking at a tournament appearance from them. Michigan State has shown flashes of being a good team. Like a lot of these lower-seeded teams, put up a great fight against Purdue, has almost beat Gonzaga earlier in the season before I think they were even at their best. So that's a very good Michigan State team right there. And then Rutgers has won a couple good games in the Big Ten, and they're just looking like they're going to have a good enough record to scratch their way into the tournament. And then finally, UNC. They're looking at being an 8 seed again after being an 8 seed and making the run to the Final Four like they did last year. So we'll see if that plays out the same way it did for them last year. And I don't know, maybe that's just where they like to be in the regular season. Marco?
I mean, this UNC team has the same roster, and they've played similarly as they did last year. They sort of hit a lot of slumps, but also when they play well, they are one of the best teams. So if they can get hot again in March, they can probably not, but maybe make another title run. 9 seeds, NC State, USC, Iowa, Boise State. NC State I don't really watch too much NC State basketball. They're always 8 or 9 seed. It feels like they're like 7 through 10 every single year. So they'll probably be decent. Maybe win the first round, lose to a 1 seed in the second round. USC, they just beat UCLA in a pretty big upset, but the Pac-12 is not good. And they're probably going to have to beat UCLA and Arizona again if they want to prove that they can move up into maybe a 6 or 7 seed area. Next up, Iowa. It's Chris Murray and a bunch of nobodies, but I mean, they barely beat Michigan. That was a heartbreaking game, but Iowa's starting to hit a little bit of a slump lately. I thought maybe last week they could have been a 6 or a 7 seed, but starting to slump. But I still think they're a good team with lots of offense. Boise State, they play phenomenal defense, not that much offense. They'll give someone a tough challenge, either the 8 seed or even the 1 seed, if they can win the first round. So they'll be a tough team to beat, but I just don't see them making much of a run. Cal, why don't you take the 10 seeds?
Yep, and our final teams that we'll be seeding, the 10 seeds. Started off, we have 2 Big Ten teams in Northwestern and Maryland, and then we have Arkansas and New Mexico. Northwestern and Maryland, like a lot of the Big Ten teams, have done just good enough in the Big Ten to scrape their way into the tournament, just like Rutgers. So definitely 2 solid teams right there that could, I will probably be picking to make an upset early in the tournament. And then, I could definitely see Northwestern or Maryland beating a team like San Diego State or Miami. So definitely some upsets that you could see possibly brewing there. And then our final 2 10 seeds, Arkansas and New Mexico. Just Arkansas, solid team, just hasn't been able to, get enough of a winning streak going to be anything higher than a 10 seed. In New Mexico, same thing. Just same pattern. Just good enough to be in the tournament. Not any team I see making any type of run, though. Marco?
Oh yeah, New Mexico coming out of an irrelevant conference in the Mountain West. Actually, I don't even know if they're in the Mountain West, but coming out of an irrelevant conference, it'll be interesting to see how they do, as they're usually the type of team to be a 13 or 14 seed, not a 10 seed. So playing against some weaker competition in the first round might help them. Next up, we're going to talk about some possible underdogs, some teams ranked 11th through 15th or 11th through 16th. First up, Oral Roberts. Saw them 2 years ago. Shocked Ohio State. Beat Florida in the second round as a 15 seed. They still have Max Amos, the guy that I believe dropped 40 on Ohio State. I believe he's D1 leading scorer right now. Oral Roberts pretty much have the same exact team from 2 years ago. Next up, Kent State. They play phenomenal defense out of the MAC. Easily the best team in the MAC, and I could see them maybe even being a 12 seed and getting that 12-5 matchup that the 12 seed usually wins. And lastly, UAB, they have Jelly Walker. That's about it. I'm not even sure if they're in the tournament as of right now, but I see them making a run with Jelly Walker, one of the best players in all of D1. Last year, they almost beat Illinois. I see them getting some vengeance. Kel, do you have anything to say about any of the underdogs?
Nope. All I want to say is that I hope one of these teams is able to make a run in March, because that's just what makes March so exciting. And finally, our last segment of the day is going to be the NFL awards ceremony. Since we have a dead week in the NFL, we're going to talk a little bit about the awards that will be presented pretty soon. So we'll start it off with the comeback player of the year, and then we'll finish it with the MVP, the most exciting award. So our 3 comeback player of the year nominees are Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, and Geno Smith. Who do you got here, Marco? Because this is a really tough one for me.
I think the best player here, I'm going to give it to Saquon Barkley. I think he's a little better than Christian McCaffrey this year. But actually, I will give it to Saquon Barkley. Brock Purdy just hasn't played enough games. Geno Smith. Geno Smith just hasn't been good enough for me. He started off the year looking like the comeback player of the year, but he just hasn't really kept that up. He has great weapons around him. I still think he was an incredible story, but Saquon Barkley, back-to-back years of leg injuries, comes back, looks like probably the best running back in the NFL, at least over the regular season. So he pretty much carried the Giants to the playoffs, so I'll give it to him.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you. Him and Christian McCaffrey have pretty similar stories being injured the past couple of years. But Saquon, I believe, has been better this year, and I think he's carried his team more than Christian McCaffrey needed to, really. Next up, we have the Defensive Rookie of the Year. This award is a want and think award, because I want Aiden Hutchinson to win the award, but I think it's going to be Woolen or Sauce Gardner, and I'm going to pick Sauce Gardner simply because of the fact that he has a bigger name than Tariq Woolen, and although Tariq has had a phenomenal season, he has more interceptions than Sauce. I just think the way that Sauce was able to lock down some of those big-name receivers, he got a lot of press for that, and I think that's the reason why he's going to win the defensive rookie of the year. Marco?
Yeah, I think Hutchinson or Woolen honestly deserves it. I mean, Sauce is a great corner, but he does get physical. He gets penalized a lot. He just has lots of recognition. Woolen has more picks than him. Even Aiden Hutchinson, a defensive end who never recorded an interception in college, has more interceptions than the guy who most people are saying going to win Defensive Rookie of the Year as a corner. I honestly think Hutchinson should win it. I mean, he has more sacks, more interceptions, more tackles for loss than everyone else. I think Woolen's a better cover corner than Sauce. Sauce is a good man-to-man corner, but Woolen I think is better in zone. But I think Hutchinson's gonna win with like 4 interceptions. That's like tied for top 15 in the NFL. 7 sacks, so many pressures. Like last year, you got double teamed.
No, he has like 9.5 sacks.
Oh yeah, 9.5 sacks with a lot of double teams all year, and teams truly had to double team him as well. So I'm giving it to Aiden Hutchinson.
Yep, I would really like to see that happen. Next up, we have the Offensive Rookie of the Year. Nominees are Brock Purdy, Kenneth Walker, and Garrett Wilson. This one's a tough one for me. Kenneth Walker had a few really amazing games, and he was solid throughout the entire season. Brock Purdy came in, and I don't think he led the 49ers enough. Like, his defense and the weapons around him kind of carried him, which is why I don't think it's going to be Purdy. And Garrett Wilson had a phenomenal season. So, for me, it's between Kenneth Walker and Garrett Wilson. And I think I'm going to take Kenneth Walker just because I just think he was a little bit more effective, and his team was a lot better. Or not a lot, but his team was better than the Jets were. And I just think he was more of a factor in that almost. Marco?
Yeah, I mean, 228 carries, 1,050 yards, 4.6 yards a carry, along with 9 touchdowns for Kenneth Walker. That's an incredible stat line, considering he only started like 13 games. Garrett Wilson was playing all year. He did have an incredible year. He got over 1,000 receiving yards. He's a great player with, he had 147 receptions, 1,103 yards. That's an incredible stat line, but only 4 touchdowns. Just wasn't that big a factor in the red zone, more of like a 2nd and 10, 3rd and long type of receiver than like a more reliable receiver. So I do understand that he had terrible quarterbacks throwing to him, but Kenneth Walker did not have the best O-line and still dominated. So I'll give the award to him as well.
You want to take the Offensive Player of the Year next?
Yeah, so candidates: Tyreek Hill, Jalen Hurts, Justin Jefferson, Patrick Mahomes. I'm just going to eliminate both quarterbacks because I do not think that this should be a quarterback award. I think there should be its own big award for quarterback and for best quarterback, and also the MVP is a quarterback award anyways. So between Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson, it's obvious it's Justin Jefferson. Not much of a debate. Jefferson, 1,809 yards, a historic season. He had about 100 more yards than Tyreek Hill. He had only 14 more targets. He was just the better player between the two, and he was double teamed or triple teamed every game. Tyreek Hill is weird because he just runs fast, so you have to sort of have safety help, but you don't really have to double team him like on slants and drag routes like they have to do to Jefferson. Jefferson's the more influential player. If you put Tyreek Hill on the Vikings, I don't think they go as far. If you put Jefferson on the Dolphins, I think they go further. So that's why I'm giving this award to Jefferson.
Yeah, it's a really interesting take. I think that it could go to either of these guys. Stat-wise, Tyreek Hill definitely takes the cake there. But I agree with you. I think Justin Jefferson made more of a difference on his team in getting other receivers open, like Adam Thielen. So I just think he's more of a game changer in my opinion. And then next up, we have the Defensive Player of the Year award with nominees Nick Bosa, Chris Jones, and Micah Parsons. In my mind, there's no doubt. I think this award goes to Micah Parsons. He's been phenomenal all year. And I just truly think he's dominated every single tackle he's played against. Marco?
I mean, Micah Parsons definitely a good option, but one thing I would like to say is why is Hassan Reddick not on this list? He just doesn't get enough recognition on the Eagles. He has 16 sacks. That's second, tied for second in the NFL with Myles Garrett. It's more than Chris Jones. Micah Parsons, not even top 5 in sacks, although he does get double teamed or triple teamed all year. But I'm going to give it to Nick Bosa. 18 and a half sacks, most the NFL by 2.5. He gets double teamed a lot. I mean, all these guys get double teamed a lot. And also, he got 18 and a half sacks in one less game than pretty much everyone else. So that's why I'm giving it to him. So yeah, he's just a very dominant player. And he even had more tackles for loss than Micah Parsons. So I think Nick Bosa is the best defensive player in the NFL this year.
Yeah, definitely going to be interesting to see who wins that one. And finally, Marco, you want to take away the nominees for the MVP?
Yeah, so first up, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, and Justin Jefferson. Cal, why don't you make your prediction first?
Yeah, so my prediction for this award is conflicted just because of the fact that there's guys that are very flashy on here and that people want to see win the award. Guys like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. Out of those two guys, if it was just Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, I would take Patrick Mahomes. I just think Josh Allen threw too many interceptions this year. But in my opinion, the true meaning of the most valuable player award, if you're going off the name most valuable player, this award goes to Jalen Hurts. His team was undefeated when he was playing, and they had multiple losses without him. If that's not the most valuable player, then I don't know what is. So in my opinion, I think Jalen Hurts should win this award, but it could definitely go to a guy like Patrick Mahomes. Margo?
Well, yeah, you could say that because Jalen Hurts, I believe he did lose one game in the football team, but he went like 13-1, 14-1 starter. Gardner Minshew did lose a couple of games when he came in. But you put Jalen Hurts on the Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes on the Eagles. I think Eagles, if Mahomes doesn't get injured like Hurts does, Eagles probably either go undefeated or 16-1 with Mahomes at quarterback. I think Chiefs probably go 12-5, 11-6 with Hurts. I think Mahomes is the most valuable player in the NFL, just straight up. I'd prefer to have him on my team over anyone else, so that's why I'm taking him. Most passing yards as well. I don't really care about stats, but I just think he is the most valuable player in the NFL. So that's why Patrick Mahomes, I believe, will win MVP.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think Patrick Mahomes will. I'm just saying, based off what it looks like, just like what Eagles did record-wise, I would say it would be Jalen Hurts. But I agree, Patrick Mahomes is definitely the more talented player of the two. Do you have anything else for today?
Nope.
All right, thank you all for listening to the Second Take podcast. We will see you next week. Peace.